Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another episode of High on Rugs. For this project, we're going back to my book of drawings and we're going to pick out another one to transform into a fantastic rug. And I'm just kind of scrolling through, deciding what I want to do, and I think that this Hollow Knight drawing will do just nicely. The knight facing off with the shade, looking death in the eyes. So with our drawing picked out, we're skipping right on ahead to the tracing phase. I've got the image pulled up to my projector and projecting onto the tufting cloth, and then I'm just tracing out the whole design. Just making sure every single object and every single line is fully traced. You can't tell, but this time I'm using a purple marker for no reason other than I've gone through all of my black markers because this tufting cloth really just dries them out. And I like nice bold lines to go off of. So I'm just doing everything from the shade to the knight himself to his nail on his back. If you're unfamiliar with Hollow Knight, it's not a sword, it's a nail. All the bug shells, the lamp post. Making sure everything is drawn out nicely, and then we can turn on the light and see what we've got. And so far it looks pretty good. Now I'm just using something to get a straight edge, and I'm using a big fat Magnum Sharpie to trace out a nice border. Once I'm happy with how the border looks, we can get started. Grabbing the black yarn to start our outline, and I've never shown this before, but here is how I thread the tufting gun. I pull 2 strands of yarn through the guide, and then I use this little piece of like chicken wire that I bent over itself to shove through the hole, bend outwards, and thread the yarn through, and then pull it back through the hole of the needle. And right as I get it pulled through, my camera popped out of the mount. I just figured I'd leave that in because it made me laugh. So with our thread in the gun, we're ready to get started. And why not start with the knight himself? I figured it was very important to get the shape of his head right, so I wanted to make sure I was doing it while I was still feeling fresh. So I'm starting with the sides of his head and his horns, and just going all the way around, paying very close attention to the shape of his horns. I like to draw the knight all the time. He's one of my favorite things to just doodle when I'm bored or whatever. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to get his horns right. If they're off, the whole thing looks off. It's one thing I've always really loved about Hollow Knight is the art style. It's so somber yet beautiful, and they do so much with such a limited palette. Sure, there's some green and purple if you go to Crystal Peaks or the Queen's Gardens. But most, I'd say 90% of the palette is just blue and gray and black and bluish gray. That's really all they went with, and somehow they made such a vibrant and beautiful looking game. However, I don't know if you've ever been shopping for yarn at a local Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Walmart even, wherever they sell yarn near you. It is not the greatest selection no matter which place you go. Finding the right shades of bluish grays and darker bluish grays was quite a pain in the ass. So I found shades that I considered to be remotely similar to what I was looking for. But that being said, some of the colors in the end might be a little off from what is on the drawing. But you gotta make do with what you have. Next time I do something like this that has very specific colors, I might see if I can find some kind of website that will do any color yarn you want. I'm sure there's something like that out there. And I'm very happy to be doing something Hollow Knight related because honestly, it's one of my favorite games, and I know we're all very excited for Silksong. Anyone who's a fan of Hollow Knight has been waiting years and years probably. And hopefully someday it will come out because I just want more. And there's so much potential when it comes to Hollow Knight and making rugs. I mean, I could do any character from Hollow Knight pretty much. But here I am just outlining away. I was very apprehensive to start on the Nautilus-shaped lamppost spiral, whatever you would call that, because it just looked so overwhelming, just going in circles and circles and really trying to make sure that it remains the same thickness all the way around, consistently through. And not to toot my own horn, but I think I did pretty good. Pretty happy with how that lamp looks. And now I'm just doing these spiky sort of clouds. Now when I do my drawings, I usually use a few references and I just kind of compile things. But these spiky clouds are unique to myself. This was not from any kind of reference, it's just that most of the references I used for the drawing had very much gradient backgrounds, and I don't do gradients, I like nice solid lines, so that was my compromise, just to give it my own unique touch. And of course this smokiness in the background, all these squiggly lines, which I really love to do because I just draw them onto the cloth with my marker, and I sort of follow it, but I can kind of just go buck wild with it and do my own thing, and so that's always quite liberating. And now I'm just making all these bug shells, because in the world of Hollow Nest, the roads are paved with the dead, I guess. The bug shells, they're just everywhere. Really trying to make sure that it looks like there's some in front of each other and some are in the background, and giving a sense of distance by making them smaller as it, trails off towards the night. So just layer after layer of these bug shells. So with all the bug shells outlined, I'm just going around the entire perimeter and giving it a nice thick border. I wanted to make sure this border was super thick. So I did, I think it was 5 or 6 lines of black all the way around. Just wanted to have a real nice border. And now I'm just filling in the 2 black corners. I did them this way because sometimes I don't know how to really end my drawings. So cutting off chunks with nice black shadowy areas is always a good way to do it, I suppose. I think it gives the whole image a unique feel to it, I guess. And man, did all that take a while. Border done, the outline done, and the corners all filled in, we can start filling in the shade. And he's easy enough, it's just a whole lot more black. I think it's pretty cool how a lot of games now, they use sort of the Dark Souls thing where if you get killed, you can drop all your stuff and you can still have a chance to go back and get it if you're good enough. And that's exactly what the shade is. When you die, you leave your shade behind and you can find him in the world where you perish, and you have a chance to defeat him and get all your stuff back. Really cool mechanic. And I just really like the design of the shade too. He's just this black shadowy version of yourself with these glowing white eyes, and just looks kind of ominous and just sort of neat. So with the shade all filled in, we're starting to work on the lamppost a little bit. Most of it is shrouded in shadow, so a good 2/3 of it is going to be filled in with black all the way up. And then we just gotta give the knight his little legs. Try to make sure I didn't forget anything and have to go back and switch colors back and forth. It can be a real pain. And I did almost forget to do his legs. And we're moving right on to the darker gray. And once again, I'm just squiggling these squiggly lines, sort of haphazardly, however I feel like. And we're gonna fill in the outer parts of them. I did the drawing and I couldn't tell you if this is just smoky background or if it's water in the distance. I really don't know. That could be whatever you interpret it to be, I suppose. It's just a cop-out, I guess. So with that part done, we got some more gray to do, which is going to be the sort of middle part of the background. And that, I would say, is hazy sky. And with that all done, we're still using the gray, coming on over to our street light and filling in the circular spiral. And we're done with the dark gray and moving on to the light gray. The light gray is going to fill in these gaps between the darker gray, just to give it a sort of mixed up feel, I guess. And this seems like a good a time as any to say, if you're new here and you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, why not subscribe? It really helps me out a lot. I would really appreciate it. So I'm also using this light gray color to fill in most of the knight's head, but you can see that I'm leaving some gaps on the sides, and the top, and the tips of his horns, because those are going to be filled in later with white highlights. Just to show that the light is shining on him, and he's not all gray. We all know he's white. And I'm filling in the rest of the street light with the light gray. The street light's got a few different colors going on, but I think at this point it's pretty much done except for the light itself. And now we can start working on these big boulders, which the tops of them are going to be light gray, and then it's going to get progressively darker as it goes down. I find that you can pretty much make anything look good if you give it a solid color, a highlight, and a shadow. That is the key to make any drawing look good. You just gotta get the colors right. And we're doing the same thing with the bug shells. They're gonna get gray, and then blue, and then darker blue for their shadow. Just going over every single last one, and that took a while. And I just wanted to show what's been going on in Florida. If you follow Florida news at all, you might have heard that Fort Lauderdale got flooded to hell recently, and this was the storm that did it. Just wanted to show the footage because I thought it looked pretty wild. But while that's going on, I'm in here tufting, and we're on to the blue yarn. And more of the background is getting filled in. These sections of background, they take so long to do. And they're so tedious after a while, just going row by row by row. But it ain't gonna get done unless you do it, so I just gotta buckle up and grind it out. Here's a nice time lapse of me filling in the clouds, those spiky clouds. And we're one step closer. Using the light blue now to give the knight some highlight on his cloak as well. And then we're gonna give the two big boulders their main color, which is the light blue. And again, like I said, the colors at the store were pretty hard to find super accurate versions of what I was looking for. And if I could go back, I think I would have gone slightly darker blue with this blue. But too late to go back now. Just something to think about in the future. And I'm gonna go ahead and give some shine around the light. I figure the background's gonna be dark blue there, so the lighter blue will give the impression that the light bulb is shining. And like I said, talking about forgetting things between switching my yarn colors, I forgot to fill in his nail, which seems like quite the oversight. And it was, but easy enough to thread the gray yarn back and fill in the nail. And now finally we're on to the dark blue, and there is a lot to be done with it. We have to fill in the whole rest of the sky, and the rest of the big boulders, and the rest of the shells, and a few other things. And again, it's just a matter of grinding it out and going row by row until it's all done. Now we're just taking that dark blue and filling in the rest of the boulders. Just a little tip of the one on top and the bottom of the other one. And I'd say we're getting pretty close to completion. Just a little bit more to go. Of course, we have to fill in the knight's cloak. It wouldn't be complete without it, but that's easy enough, just a small little section. And the knight is completely done. Now we just have to finish filling in these bug shells. Just giving them all their shadows one by one, all the way down the road. And last but not least, we have white. Filling in the light bulb, giving it a little shine around it. And of course, like I said earlier, we have to give the knight his highlights. Just the tips of his mandibles, is that the right word? And a few little lines around his head, and that'll do it. Now I'm just filling in the shade's eyes. And oops, go ahead and puncture my finger on the tip of the tufting gun there. Tricked myself pretty good. That was not fun, or smart. And of course it happens right at the end. And with that, all the tufting is done. Both the shade's eyes are filled in and everything is completed. So like always, it's time to bust out the carpet glue and glue it all up. This time I went back to the spatula that I used, considering I now have a bleeding thumb. Probably wouldn't be good to get the glue in it, so I went back to using a tool instead of my bare hand. But just kidding, I lied, because there I am soaking it all in with my bare hand.
I couldn't resist.
I can't help it, I just like to make sure everything is really saturated and nothing else is gonna pull out later. And a few days later, the glue has had some time to dry. And it's time to pull our work off of the rack and plop it down to do our finishing touches. As always, I'm just cutting off the excess cloth, cutting it into little bits, and going around and around with the hot glue, putting little beads of glue on each one, folding it over to give it a nice waterfall edge, and then we're putting our backing on. Lots of spray adhesive on both sides and smear it down. And then the same thing on the other side, lots of glue, and smear it down. And with a quick flip, we can get the shaving. It's just like cutting the grass with a very, very tiny lawnmower. Just going section by section, making sure all the high spots have been taken out. And I went through and I carved out some of the lines just to clean them up a little bit, especially with the characters and the clouds and stuff like that. And there it is, a Hollow Knight rug of the knight facing off against his shade under the illuminated street of the Howling Cliffs, let's say. That's what it looks like to me. It could be Dirtmouth, it could be the Howling Cliffs. It's definitely somewhere outside. Considering I couldn't find the exact right colors that I needed, I think it looks pretty good. So let me know what you think of this rug. Did I nail it, or does it need more work? And let me know what I should do next time. I'm always looking for suggestions. Leave me a comment and say hi. By the way, I started a Patreon page. I don't really have much to offer at this time, but if you want to help me out and help fund this channel, just give it a click right there. I'm gonna go play some Hollow Knight. And until next time, I will see you again back here with another goofy rug. See ya!